The views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily the views of ECTV News, the City of East Chicago, nor this broadcast station or website. ECTV airs public meetings as a service to the community it serves. Speakers at public meetings, broadcast, or posted by ECTV News are solely responsible for their comments. ECTV News reserves the right to edit or remove any profanity or abusive language or behavior deemed inappropriate for our viewing audience. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, contact ECTV News at 219-391-8206.
Good evening. Welcome to the East Chicago Common Council regular meeting for Monday, December 12th, 2016. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call for attendance, please.
Franciski,
Present.
Walker,
Present.
Vasquez,
Present.
Garcia, Orange,
Present.
London, Medina,
Present.
Monroe,
Present.
Maldonado.
Present. Madam Clerk, let the record reflect that Councilman Garcia called and said he would be arriving late. Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda, please.
Minutes of the council meeting, regular meeting, Monday, November 28, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Walker, seconded by Councilman Monroe. Discussion on the motion. Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Garcia, Orange,
Yes.
London,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Monroe,
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item on the agenda.
Committee reports.
Council, we're going to move the board appointments to new business at this time. Next item on the agenda, please.
Communication from the mayor.
Today we have with us Mr. Crowley, Director of the Water Filtration Plant. If you can step forward, please. Mr. Crowley. There was a meeting earlier today here in Council Chambers where some issues were addressed, some concerns. And so we would like for you to give us a briefer summary and kind of keep us up to date about what's going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So today we held a forum. The intent was to provide an outreach forum for residents to become more informed about the issues that were addressed late last week. At that time, there was communication sent out from the EPA, US EPA, to a handful of residents that had their water sampled as part of the efforts for remediation of the soil in the Superfund site. Approximately 18 sites, 18 of the 45 parcels that were targeted for sampling had results that indicated there were presence of elevated levels of lead in the drinking water. Today's forum the intent was to talk to the public, to address any concerns about drinking water, to specifically talk about the drinking water quality in the city of East Chicago, to allay those fears and concerns, and to point to really the background in terms of how that determination was made, and to also provide some recommendations for any citizens that might be concerned about their drinking water. I can summarize. In essence, so what transpired with the work from the EPA is that they performed what's called sequential sampling. In essence, they took multiple samples at each of the residential sites, anywhere from 12 to 20 samples at the tap. What they were attempting to do was trying to see if there was any influence of their work, the excavation work, on the drinking water line. So they wanted to see, by disturbing the soil using heavy equipment, if that somehow might rattle or impact the existing drinking water service lines. They weren't quite sure if we had lead lines in any of our residential properties, and they wanted to see if that would somehow negatively impact the drinking water. The protocol that was used is something that's new, unique, hasn't been done before. It's not a standard that the city has to adhere to for drinking water compliance. The city complies with the lead and copper rule. It's a long-standing federal guideline that was put in place in 1991. What that in essence requires us to do as a city is to, within every 3 years, to sample at least 30 properties throughout the city. We make an effort to target homes that we have an awareness that have lead lines. We try to do it in a sense where there's a pretty good uniform distribution throughout the city. So we're seeing a representative population within that sample that we collect. Every year that we've done compliance testing through the lead and copper rule, we have been in compliance with the guidelines from the state through IDEM and with the federal government. The EPA sets an action level of 15 parts per billion as an action level in which you have to take some type of response action if you detect that within at least 10% of the samples. We recently completed testing this summer for lead and copper rule compliance. Our average of the 90th percentile was 8.4 parts per billion, so just about half of what the action level requires. We also did testing 2 years ago in 2014, and at that time the numbers were similar. We had a 7.8 part per billion average of the 90th percentile. What's important to notice is the distinction in the testing. Again, I mentioned they do a sequential sampling. They take multiple samples to really get an idea of the character of the service line. The service line essentially is the line that is conveying water from the water main, typically in the street, all the way to the tap. The lead and copper rule doesn't require that level of sampling for compliance. So the approach and the method that was used is something, again, that's novel, new, and hasn't been done before, and it's requiring the city to meet a standard that no one else, no other community in the country has to meet. And so there's a disconnect in terms of meeting that guideline and requirement and still being in compliance with what we're regulated to do. So what we did, because they pointed out some concerns with seeing elevated levels of lead from their testing, is we did research and identified and developed some guidelines and recommendations for the public to consider. Namely, we spelled out some activities in which the resident or homeowner can take to see if they do currently have lead service lines in their home. There's a process they can take in which they can use something like a small coin and a magnet. And if they go in the vicinity of where their meter is, and if they look at where that fitting connection is, they can actually scratch off the surface of the metal and try to see if the magnet will stick to it. And if it does, that indicates that it's a galvanized steel pipe. If it doesn't stick, it's likely either a copper or a lead pipe. We'll provide more details on that approach on the East Chicago website. In addition to, there are some additional frequently asked questions that we've put on that site to help answer residential customers' concerns. We also are making a recommendation that residents consider obtaining a tap filter to place on their kitchen tap. The idea with these filters is that if there are concerns with lead in the water, the lead would originate generally from a couple of sources. One would be from the service line itself. Our reports, our data indicate that and even the EPA confirms in their sampling that there is not a concern for lead in our distribution system. Where they're identifying a concern with lead is in service lines. So that's essentially that line again that conveys from the main to the tap. You might ask, well, how does that get there? Well, it could be a combination of factors. Part of the line is a public portion that the city owns that comes right off of the main. That portion typically runs from the main right up to the curb stop. That portion may contain lead, and it's not uncommon for that to take place. And then you've got the rest of the pipe that runs from the curb stop or the shutoff all the way into the tap. That portion the resident owns. That portion may be comprised of lead or galvanized. It can be some combination. It may have some lead solder. But when you've got that combination of materials in your line, there's a possibility that you might have lead leach into the water that's coming into the home. So what we're recommending is that if there is a concern, residents obtain a tap filter to install right on the kitchen tap, and it has to be an NSF 53 rated filter installed. Those are ones that are rated to capture essentially 99.9% of the lead in the water. We're making this recommendation really as kind of more of a near-term recommendation as we're working through more of a long-term strategy to address these concerns. One of the long-term things we're looking at is potentially lead service line replacements. That's a longer-term proposition because of the costs certainly associated with that, and that would certainly be something that would have to be a coordinated effort between the city and the residents, because again, the residents own a significant portion of the service line, and again, it'd have to be something that could be done as a joint approach with the city and the residents. The other thing that we're working on, which is really more of a near-term approach, is optimizing our corrosion inhibitor. For years, ever since the lead and copper rule was adopted, we've been feeding phosphate as a corrosion inhibitor into our water, our drinking water. That's a commonly recommended type of corrosion inhibitor that's used throughout the country as a for managing lead leaching into water supply. We've been working closely with IDEM to work to make sure that we're feeding the appropriate amount of orthophosphate in our system. So we've been doing it since the early 90s, and we're continuing to do it. So the key is as a result of that, there's some significant differences between this concern that was raised through EPA and what has been transpiring in Flint, Michigan. If you look at what happened in Flint, there are a number of missteps that took place along the way. They made a decision to move away from one water supply, which was Lake Huron, and they went to a different water source. That water source proved to be more corrosive, so it had the tendency to want to attack the metals in the water supply. They also made a decision when they made that change not to add the phosphate to help provide that corrosion inhibitor to their water line supply. So that created really a compound effect that really triggered their crisis that they saw. None of those elements are in play here. We have always taken our water from Lake Michigan. We will continue to do so. It is a very good source of water. It does not have the corrosive tendencies. It typically has a more neutral pH in terms of the water quality. As I pointed out, we've always fed phosphate in our drinking water ever since the lead and copper rule went into effect in the early 90s. We will continue to do so, and we're just being proactive in terms of all the things that we do in terms of making sure that we're in compliance with federal and state guidelines. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer whatever questions you might have.
Do we have any questions? Councilwoman Vasquez.
Mr. Crowley, you mentioned that you did testing 18 out of 45 homes. Is that what you said?
The
Or
US EPA performed testing
Oh,
on
they
18 to 45 homes.
were those levels elevated high enough where they had to take an action in those homes, or?
So let me clarify. So 18 of the 45 homes that were tested were ones that they identified as having elevated levels of lead present in the service water lines.
Okay. The in the PowerPoint you gave this morning, which I thought was very good because even I could understand. I'm not an expert in water, but how are we going to let the residents know? Because I know you wanted, put it on Channel 21, but a lot of seniors, and then you want to put it on, use it on the internet.
Yeah, I like for us to utilize all of our channels, media channels for outreach. That includes ECTV, the East Chicago website, Facebook, all these different sources of information in which the residents will use, they typically use in order to get information from.
And that PowerPoint presentation you gave this morning, it was lengthy, but I think there were some key points that the residents must know about the what type of filter to buy.
Right.
Can they bathe? What do they do with the what water do they use for cooking? So I think those are what the can they take showers and do laundry. Those I think are a lot of the main concerns that the residents need to know. I don't know if a flyer could go out, through the water department, and a flyer saying, kind of pinpointing, the main concerns.
Yeah, the way I see it, it's this is a dynamic process in terms of the outreach. I don't expect this to be just kind of a one-time, here's a notification, and then just let it kind of settle there. I think we will be constantly doing research on other options and alternatives. We want to make sure we're continuing to update that information and as it becomes available to continue to disseminate it. I think having the message go out multiple times through these channels and continuing to update the information is going to be helpful for the residents.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman
Yes,
Orange.
Mrs. Orange.
I would just like to know, why do you think the EPA did this testing here and not in Flint when there was widespread water contamination? And if they only tested in 18 homes out of 45, and they didn't use this particular test there?
You're asking a difficult question. I don't know. I can't answer for them in terms of why they took this approach. So in discussions I've had with their technical people, it seems to indicate that they foresee some changes coming down the line with the lead and copper rule. We've done some research to kind of get a sense of what are the types of changes they anticipate coming, but nothing's been spelled out clearly in terms of what those changes will be. And maybe this is a preview of what those changes might entail. But why this approach was done this way, and I can't really explain that.
Mr. Crowley, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Of the 18 properties that the EPA tested or that said there were high levels, were any of those the properties that we've tested within the last 2 or 3 years? Or would you know that?
Yeah, we wanted to look to see. So there does not appear to be any overlap with any of the parcels or properties that we tested, but a couple are in close proximity to the ones that were sampled. The one thing to keep in mind, so 18 parcels showed elevated levels of lead, 45 parcels in total, generally in zones 2 and 3. So they're somewhat in a close proximity to each other. But what was interesting when we looked at the results, and again, the results we saw were just preliminary. They didn't give us any final validated data. But there was a lot of variation from home to home. So one of the things we wanted to look into is to see if there might have been some type of trend. So if you saw that there were some homes on the same block that had been tested or in close proximity to each other, would there be something to indicate that the construction in terms of the plumbing was similar? We didn't see that trend. So it was interesting where one home on the same street might show levels of lead that were not above the action level. A house down the street might show elevated levels of lead. So there's quite a bit of variation among the data that was collected.
I have another question. In your presentation earlier today, I was not able to be there, but Councilwoman Vasquez just mentioned about some of the concerns residents had regarding bathing and all of that. If you could just kind of go over those at this time so the council here knows.
Right. So some of the recommendations we made specific to any residential concerns about using water. So we made a recommendation certainly regarding when you want to use water, especially for food preparation, that you want to flush the water first. Our recommendation is that you will flush for at least 3 to 5 minutes. When we typically do our sampling for the lead and copper rule, one of the guidelines is that water has to sit idle for at least 6 hours. We're trying to get a picture of what the typical overnight might be like. It's really more trying to give us a more conservative result. We want to see if the water sits for a length of time, then that's where you have the tendency for leaching to occur from the pipes into the water. So in that type of scenario, you want to make sure that you're allowing that water to get flushed out before you want to consume it or use it in any way. So our guidance to residents is flush for at least 3 to 5 minutes before you consume any water for drinking or for food prep. Along those lines, so even after you flush that water, and again, you want to use cold water. Let's say you decide you'd like to access another faucet, maybe in a restroom or something of that nature. You're going to want to flush that water again flush that faucet with cold water at least 30 to 60 seconds. The concern we're trying to address with doing that flushing is that we brought out 2 areas where there might be concerns. One is in the service lines from the main to the house, and then you might have some concerns with any kind of brass, with lead, solder, things of that nature, any plumbing right in the vicinity of your faucet. So that water would want to be flushed before you would access it. Again, we made a recommendation about the use of a tap filter, NSF 53 certified, and that is certified for lead removal. In our presentation, we pointed out that it's really important that you carefully look at the labels if you're going to purchase a filter. There's a lot of information on those labels, and you really want to make sure it clearly states that it has that NSF 53 certification, and that it clearly states that it removes lead, 99.9% of lead. If not, then it won't be an effective filter. Regarding bathing, lead does not it doesn't basically come through the skin, so bathing is not an issue in terms of having any concerns with the lead in terms of bathing. But one of the things we do point out is with small children, because of the sensitivity in terms of baths and showers, making sure that those small children don't by any way drink that water. So you'd have to be careful with them from that standpoint. Also regarding cooking and the use of water, boiling water does not remove lead from the water. So we strongly recommend that people don't just feel that they can somehow purge their water by just taking some of that water and then just putting it in a pot and boiling it for a length of time. It actually makes the situation worse. So you want to make sure that you're using cold water primarily for flushing before you do your food prep, certainly when you're brushing your teeth and things of that nature.
Sorry,
Let the record reflect that Councilman Garcia has joined us. Do you have a question, Councilman Garcia?
I'm sorry, I was in here for your whole presentation. So, our lines are contaminated with lead. Is that?
They're not. So what I was sharing is just basically what we did. We had a session earlier today in response to the information that came out last week regarding the EPA's sampling. The main issue is that our water is in compliance with the lead and copper rule guidelines from the EPA. They acknowledge even that when we look at water that comes from our treatment plant and goes to the distribution system, that we don't see any lead concerns. The lead concerns come primarily from the service lines from the mains to the homes, or directly in the homes with any kind of fittings and faucets within the house.
So, Councilman Garcia, they want you to put the mic on.
So it's from the main to the house that it's getting contaminated? So how?
For some homes, not every home.
So what homes, what homes got tested only the third?
So the EPA did a pilot test of 45 homes that they targeted in zones 2 and 3 this fall. 18 of them, they saw results where there were elevated levels of lead.
And that's from the service line to the house. It's not.
That's correct. Because that's based on their sampling. They did sampling, which is called sequential sampling. So they basically grab multiple samples, and the idea is to get a sense of the character of the water from the faucet all the way to the main.
And that's got nothing to do with the contamination in the ground, because I know that cannot seep into the
Right.
pipes. All right.
It's a totally separate concern.
My next question is, are you going to do samples throughout the whole city? Because this might be a big concern for the whole city is with the old infrastructure that we got, that I think the whole city needs to be tested.
So here's our challenge. So the EPA introduced a new protocol, this sampling approach, that they acknowledge cost them $5,000 to perform on each house. This is not by any means any kind of a regulated process that they implemented. This was their own pilot study. So if residents wanted to get a comparable test performed, we, number one, have to get the experience to do that type of test and prepare to take on that expense to do that for every house. And it's a protocol that's not even recognized by any regulatory agency.
Well, my concern is that the EPA came up in your assessment also is that contamination is coming from the main to the house, and there is lead, and that's an issue. I don't think it'd be swept under the rug with low results, whatever. I think the whole city needs to be tested.
But I guess what would your recommendation be for how that would happen?
Don't know. That's why you're here. There's other experts that we need to probably confer with, but it's a concern for the whole city. Also, my other thing was, you said it's not an issue with bathing. Where did you get that information from?
That's actually from EPA guidance.
EPA. Yeah, it looks like we need to set up another meeting also with EPA with that contamination to find out what's right and what's wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong about it, but
all the information I provided today came from EPA guidance documents.
It's like they tell me, believe everything you see on TV or on the internet. So until we research everything, I think.
Yeah. Well, in the frequently asked questions that we provided links to the websites. It's either CDC or EPA. We didn't make this stuff up. We went to the authorities that developed this information.
Very quickly, Mr. Crowley, the recommendations that you're making, they're for the whole city, correct? Or is it just for the
We're making
zones?
that recommendation for the entire city.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Crowley.
thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda, please.
Communications from department heads. Accounts payable warrant 120616CC.
So move, Madam President.
Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Vasquez, seconded by Councilman London. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Garcia,
no.
Orange,
Yes.
London,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Monroe,
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item.
Accounts payable warrant 120616CC.
So moved, Madam President.
Motion made by Councilman Franciski, seconded by Councilwoman Orange. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Garcia,
No.
Orange,
Yes.
London,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Monroe,
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item.
Accounts payable warrant 121216CC.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilwoman Orange, seconded by Councilman London. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Garcia,
No.
Orange,
Yes.
London,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Monroe,
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item.
Accounts payable warrant 121216LA.
So move, Madam President. Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Vasquez, seconded by Councilwoman Walker. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Garcia,
No.
Orange,
Yes.
London,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Monroe,
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item.
Accounts payable warrant 121216BD.
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Franciski, seconded by Councilwoman Orange. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Garcia,
No.
Orange,
Yes.
London,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Monroe,
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item.
Accounts payable warrant 122016CC.
So move, Madam President. Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Vasquez, seconded by Councilwoman Walker. Discussion on the motion? Councilman Medina.
I have a question for someone who could answer. Kim?
I don't have the packets.
I'll show you this. Just explain what this appropriation is.
Kim, if you could approach the podium so...
I don't have the packet and I don't have the claim, so I can't give you any more detail than that. The claims are available downstairs. I could go pull it.
Is that an actual claim? I mean, it doesn't have a name, a vendor?
Yeah, the vendor is City of East Chicago.
Okay, so where are those funds coming from? Do we know?
It's coming out of the general fund because it's, well, let me see.
I mean, is that a claim or is that an appropriation?
No, it's a claim.
That's where I'm confused.
And usually it's more like I don't know exactly what it's for, but if it's paid to the City of Chicago, it's more than likely a transfer within, and it's the end of the year, so we're starting to do transfers between the funds or reimbursements that might take place. As you see the ordinance that I'm going to present tonight, there's a component of it that's going to have a transfer in it. So when you see things in there that say payable to the City of East Chicago, it's going from one fund to another within the city because the city's the vendor. I just can't speak to the exact details of this without having the actual claim in front of me.
Should that not be an appropriation or a reappropriation?
Well, in order for us to do the claim, it would have had to have an appropriation. So the appropriation has to be there, otherwise
But
it wouldn't have gone
It's not explaining on that piece of paper exactly what that is. That's why I'm,
No, and that's why, we're required to have the claims filed 5 days before every meeting. We have cutoffs for all the departments, and they have to be in our office, and then we get the docket finished 5 days, and then we keep the claims in the baskets, and then it's available for anybody to come audit them or to pull them out, and then you can find the detail. So this one in particular, when you pull it and you open it up, you're probably going to see some sort of reimbursement invoice in there that'll tell you exactly what it's for. And the appropriations are intact, otherwise the claim couldn't have been. Our safeguards in our system are, it would have rejected it if there weren't the appropriations there. That's why we come to you to ask for transfers of appropriations and such. But like I said, without me having the actual claim, because we have thousands of claims that go through the department, I can't answer off the top of my head what this one is specifically for.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Franciski?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Vasquez?
Yes.
Garcia?
Nope.
Orange?
Yes.
London?
Yes.
Medina?
No.
Monroe?
No.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item on the agenda.
Payroll warrant monthly 120116.
So moved, second, Mr. President.
Motion made by Councilwoman Orange, seconded by Councilman Garcia. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Vasquez?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Orange?
Yes.
London?
Yes.
Medina?
Yes.
Monroe?
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Next item.
Payroll warrant biweekly 120216.
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Garcia, seconded by Councilman London. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Franciski?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Vasquez?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Orange?
Yes.
London?
Yes.
Medina?
Yes.
Monroe?
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Madam Clerk, do we have any board reports? Any board reports? Any ordinances on first reading?
Yes. Ordinance 16-0018, sponsor Mayor Anthony Copeland, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of East Chicago authorizing the transfer of appropriations within and between various functions of city departments.
So moved on first and second reading. Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Orange, seconded by Councilman London. Do we have discussion on the motion?
Is anybody here to speak on this?
I left my papers up here.
Could you state your name
Yeah.
and title for the record?
Kim Anderson, I haven't yet, I got that one. Deputy City Controller. It's the time of year, as I explained, where we are getting ready to close this year's books and open next year's. And as of such, and for the new council members, you'll be seeing various appropriations, ordinances, resolutions, or documents coming before the council, asking you to transfer or carry over or close out documents or checks, different things, so we can balance our books. And with that being said, tonight's the start of that, and this is the first one, and it's requesting transfers of monies to different accounts than it is right now. It's actually just transferring the appropriations that we talked about, because we need to have the appropriation in place to be able to pay our expenses. So we have the cash, but we need to move the appropriation from one account to another. We passed the budget a year, we passed it last October. So we've been well over a year. We're coming to the end of this year cycle, this budget cycle, and we have 3 weeks left in the year, and we need to move money around so that we can meet our operating expenses for the rest of the year. And these are projections, forecasts. We track it all year long, and then our agreement for quite some time with the council was we kind of monitor it, and then as it gets close, usually about the first meeting in December, we'll try to bring it to the council and ask for it to be moved, and that'll give us enough in these categories to meet year-end expenses, year-end payrolls, close the books, instead of chasing a moving target all year long where it's better to wait to the end, and then when it gets close, we square up a number. Some of the other things we'll bring you, I'll explain more, because it'll be new to many of you, but you'll find we'll do it.
Councilman Garcia.
Can we just stay on this ordinance?
Yeah.
Instead of just going on the budget there. My question is from interest on temporary loans to public work reimbursement. Can you explain that, or can somebody explain that?
Yeah. When we created the Public Works revolving account, we explained to the council that it's going to be a living, breathing, growing thing. We had nothing to base the expenditures on and how much each of these departments were going to have to reimburse. So the numbers that we assigned, the appropriations that we assigned to this general service fund were not sufficient. So in order for us to but to reimburse the revolving fund, we need, we're estimating we need about $75,000 more in appropriations, and then we will pay that.
All right, my question is, okay, what interest on temporary loans that you guys are transferring to that fund?
That was the appropriation for interest on temporary loans. So the appropriation is just a number, the line item in the budget. And because our interest was less, either we didn't borrow as much, we had a lower interest rate than anticipated. Remember, you're passing the budget in October, and we don't even get our loans until December or January, so you don't even know what the interest rate's going to be until you close. So you have to leave enough appropriations to be able to pay for them, but they came in lower than.
How many loans is that interest? Are they basing that on?
That was just for the TAWs in the general fund, because I'm taking it from the general fund controller's miscellaneous account, because we had a surplus because we didn't pay the interest expense, so we have that appropriation sitting there, and we're just going to move that appropriation, not cash, because we're all in one big pot here in the general fund. So I'm going to take it from that line item in general fund and give it to the public works reimbursement line item in the general fund.
And why is only personal services and all these other ones? Was that salary or?
So yeah, well, some of them are the actual wages. Some of them are insurance issues, and with that, by going into personnel services, then we can hit whatever is short. So, for the judge, which is the first one on there, we've known since we approved her budget last year that she didn't have enough appropriations to cover her budget. But we had to see how it played out, as far as sometimes if they get docked, then they get no pays and it gives you a surplus. Sometimes if you work overtime, then it takes you the other way, it's a deficit. So if she has enough in her salaries line, then we can also move that into her insurance to cover the shortfall. So by us putting everything into personnel services, it can go into, so it's going to go into one of those. It's either going to go into salaries, it's going to go into insurance, it's going to go into federal tax, state tax, retirement, or state unemployment. Those are the only categories in there. So
I thought we took care of the insurance a couple months ago.
we took care of we transferred to square up the deficit insurance account, not the insurance in her budget that was short. So her budget, when she submitted her 2016 budget, she came to the meetings the council had, the finance committee had, and she submitted a budget to the council when she met with them, and that was in July. Well, as we continue to build our budget, we tweak some of the numbers as you get in some of these fringe numbers. So we tweak the numbers, and she apparently did not know that, and she submitted her budget based on what she had already given to the council, and it wasn't sufficient with the actual.
All right, the first one is the judge for $25,000. Who's the next one? Because you didn't list what departments they was coming from or going to.
The next one is law department. The following one is,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, can you explain the law department one then? For salary?
The law department, I think they're tight every year for some reason. I have several ones that are on here. MVH, law, planning, every year are tight. Now, is it if they're switching insurances, if somebody's getting overtime, if somebody leaves and we pay out? I can't tell you exactly the experience, but I know they're like $3,000, $3,500. I don't even think it's 35. I think I rounded up, but they're going to be off by $3,000.
Hey, law department was the next one.
Is HR. That problem, I know what that problem is because I discussed it with Rob, is when we had we have the part-timer kind of, they have the intern or part-timers, and they usually pay them out of the pool, out of general services pool or whatever, or public works or whatever the pool is that we pay them out of. Well, the part-timer, when he ran the payroll through, he charged them directly to HR's budget, and they didn't have that position in their budget, so they came up short.
After HR? You got 40.
After HR is planning.
Business and planning?
Is planning, yes. Yeah. And planning is for several reasons. We had an employee leave that we had to pay out, and then we replaced him. And then if you replace him, so you're automatically going to be short. And then the same thing with planning, with a couple temporary people that were getting charged to there.
And then that last one, you got motor vehicle highway.
That's MVH. Those are our street guys, our union guys. So a portion of this, I'll probably say a third of it at least, maybe more, is for the union bonus that the mayor just approved.
How much of it is the bonus?
At least 20,000, according to, I think, what Rob's projections was 20 of that. And then this, they're their own fund. They're, as you see, they're different. That's why I didn't include them. So we're taking money from their lower line items, which is their contractual services, and moving it up into there. And they have enough cash. I'm just not sure. We missed the mark with them last year, and I don't know if there's something in our spreadsheet that's not coming out right, and so again, we missed the mark. They don't have a big fluctuation of staff. It's something we're gonna have to look at, but in the big picture, I kind of looked at their budget, and I said we're off by $60,000, and I looked at their personnel appropriations, and it's 0.1% that we're off. And then the general fund, the same thing. I think we were off by, it came to $79,000. We were off with these appropriations. We missed the mark by, and our budget was like $22 million. So we were off by 0.004%, which would equate to like 4 cents on $1,000. And we do at budget time, we project, and your financial advisor gets we give them copies of what we project with, but it's a moving target. If one thing changes by 1 penny, we build no cushion into the budget. We want to present something balanced, and there's no room for error. So anything that moves causes these fluctuations. But we have agreed, and we set this protocol up, is we haven't overspent the appropriations yet. We're coming to you asking you to move the money so that we can pay the last 2 payrolls of the year. And actually, all these departments can make it until the last payroll of the year is December 30th. So. that's where we're at with this.
Yeah, because it goes from personal service to personal service, so how's that done?
Well, I could have taken it, well, yeah, because I'm just taking it from one line item, and one department's personnel services to another, because we have several departments that have surpluses, because the same thing that happened,
Coming from another department.
yes.
Okay, see, next time, just for our sake, for our education's sake, can you list that on there? Because I'd like to know where's it coming from and where it's going to.
Oh, yeah, just put a
Because
specific
this doesn't tell
department.
me nothing
Okay,
at all.
yeah, that's fine.
So in the future, if you please do that, I really appreciate it.
Okay, no problem.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Franciski.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Vasquez.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Orange.
Yes.
London.
Yes.
Medina.
Yes.
Monroe.
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes. Any ordinances on second reading?
No.
Any ordinances on third reading?
No.
Any resolutions?
No.
Old business? Councilman Franciski.
Madam President, under old business, I'd like to bring back, put back on the agenda ordinance 16-0012.
Second, Ms. President.
Motion made by Councilman Franciski, seconded by Councilman Garcia to add Resolution 16-0012 to the agenda. Discussion? Councilman Franciski.
Well, Madam President, we did have an environmental public health meeting on the resolution. I believe we had Mike Beanick with LCC Telecom Services. I hope I'm saying that right. Also, we had Mark Hahn with the School City of East Chicago and Marino Solario with the city planner. They're all here this evening to speak on.
Can I have a roll call to add this item to the agenda, please?
Franciski.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Vasquez.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Orange.
No.
London.
Yes.
Medina.
Yes.
Monroe.
No.
Maldonado.
Yes. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. President.
Motion made by Councilman Garcia, seconded by Councilman Franciski. Discussion on the motion. Roll call, please.
Franciski.
Yes.
Walker.
No.
Vasquez.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Orange. No. London.
No.
Medina.
No.
Monroe.
No.
Maldonado.
Yes. Motion fails. Do we have any new business?
Madam President, can we send a letter to the engineering department? I got a call from a resident in Marshtown. The lights of the 500 block of Lilac, they're out. A couple of residents says they've been having some issue with some lighting over there. We could tell them, we could send them, is Ellie out here? Oh.
Ellie, that's here, yes.
Ellie, if you could send them a letter to the engineering department. The 500 block with Lilac, some of the street lights are out. Lilac in Markstown.
Council, we have board appointments. We have, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Orange. Sorry.
And two, Alita, if you can work on this, we're not gonna send it now, and if you can maybe get with Mr. Bauer, so we want the exact wording and everything for this, is the new president-elect and also the vice president-elect to send a letter asking them to, I know they have this big immigration thing that they want to do, but asking them to keep the DREAM Act for the children that were brought here by their parents that have made good for themselves, going to college, and made sure that they have been good citizens to keep the DREAM Act intact so that those children are not sent back.
And you want me to address this to who again?
The president-elect, I can't even say his name, but the president-elect, I can't even say, and the vice president-elect. And like I said, get with Mr. Bowers as far as the exact, the DREAM Act, the number of the DREAM Act that was passed through Congress.
Councilman Monroe.
If my colleague doesn't mind, I would like to have my name on that too.
Councilwoman Vasquez.
I think we all could have the lines put on that, because I think this is very important. And since he says he's going to keep some of it and throw out some, we want to make sure he keeps that.
Shirley, that could everyone's name be on that, please? Thank you. Councilman Garcia.
Yeah, Madam President, on this lead issue, I don't know if we could probably get together, have an executive session on it, or try to get more facts on what's going on. I think it needs to be done. I know one of the past meetings, Councilwoman Vasquez asked for EPA to come to a meeting, correct? Have they answered you yet?
No, we didn't send that letter out because I thought they were gonna have another briefing. That's fine.
And the reason I bring that up is because for some reason the EPA thinks that some of the contamination stopped on Chicago Avenue hasn't not come over Chicago Avenue, and it has. And I think the whole city needs to be checked as a whole. We're surrounded by industry, and the whole city needs to be checked. And I think we need to push the EPA to get that done, Madam President.
Noted, Councilman Garcia. That leads us to our board appointments. Council, we have several board appointments that need to be filled. On your agenda, you have the applicants that have submitted the necessary information in a timely fashion to be considered for the open positions. There was a committee meeting, but there was not consensus at that meeting, so I brought it to the full council for a vote. The first board vacancy we have one vacancy on the Urban Enterprise Board. The prerequisite for that board is for the applicant to live in the zone area. The only person that applied that lived in the zone area is Miss Kimberly Edwards. So
Madam President, I nominate Kimberly Edwards for the Urban Enterprise Board.
Second, Madam President.
Second.
can we have a roll call? And if you could state the person's last name. Roll call to approve Kimberly Edwards to the Urban Enterprise Board. Roll call, please.
Francisci,
Mrs. Edwards.
Walker,
I abstain.
Vasquez,
Edwards.
Garcia,
Edwards.
Orange,
Edwards.
London,
Edwards.
Medina,
Edwards.
Monroe,
Edwards.
Maldonado.
Edwards. The second board, we had one vacancy and two applicants. That would be the BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals. I would ask the council to please signify their vote by stating the person's last name. Roll call, Madam Clerk, for the appointment to the BZA.
Francisci,
Serrano.
Walker,
Serrano.
Vasquez,
Serrano.
Garcia,
Serrano.
Orange,
Tinsdale.
London,
Tisdale.
Medina,
Serrano.
Monroe,
Serrano.
Maldonado.
Serrano. Redevelopment Board, there are two vacancies. We're going to do a Roll call for the first vacancy. Please signify by stating the person's last name. Roll call, please.
Franciski,
Rodriguez.
Walker,
Nava.
Vasquez,
Rodriguez.
Garcia,
Rodriguez.
Orange,
Nava.
London,
Nava.
Medina,
Rodriguez.
Monroe,
Nava.
Maldonado.
Rodriguez. Roll call for the second vacancy on the redevelopment board.
Franciski,
Nava.
Walker,
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councilwoman, please.
Certainly can.
Okay, we did Nava first. We can do it a
You
second
can
time.
vote for her a second time, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
as many times as they got a place.
Oh, okay. Nava.
Vasquez,
Nava.
Garcia,
Gomez.
Orange,
Nava.
London,
Nava.
Medina,
Nava.
Monroe,
Nava.
Maldonado.
Gomez. Thank you to everyone that, I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
I'm glad this process is over. And maybe it should be a separate committee that does this, because I'm really not, I really wasn't happy at the way things went with this process. But 4 years ago, when we started this process, we started and we looked at the best candidates for that job, for that position, for that board. And when we came together the other night, we talked about certain things and everything. And now, I'm not going to mention anybody's name, but if the rock hits you in the head, then you know you said it. But the thing of it is that we've never had a board member go out and solicit, or even at the time, even try to threaten, well, I got 4 votes because I've gone from person to person to go for 4 boards. Yes, people asked us, will you vote for me? And we never had people soliciting or either try to threaten and say, well, I got the 4 votes and you better vote for me. I think that's deplorable. I won't say anything about that person. Also, for one councilman to tell another councilman what a person said, I think horrible. We have never had that. This 4 years that we've had this board process, we did this to eliminate the politics out of it, for the president to be able to pick who they wanted on the board, so that residents would get a chance to have an opportunity to serve the community. And if this happened, like it's been rumored to say, I think horrible. And that I think that at some point, people should, as a councilman, it shouldn't even go down like that. And we should have some type of integrity on this council, that we are not, even though we may not disagree, or we may not even like each other up here, or whatever, but to a point where we lose our integrity, where people go out and they know what has been said about a board member, I think.
Councilman Garcia.
I like everybody.
I agree with you, Councilman Orange, to leave it for a committee of 3. I think we should have an executive session that we're all present, and if you don't show up, you know what, but I think we all should be there and discuss all the candidates, which would be fair. I think it's unfair just 3 people just to try to decide on it, and we'll never come up with an agreement, but if we have an executive board meeting, I'm pretty sure we could come up with something, but at least we all be at the table and speak our piece.
What everybody else said.
Any further discussion? That leads us to our public expression portion of the agenda. I have one public comment card. I hope I'm saying the first name correct. Friendly.
Yes, that's me. I'd actually like
If you could step to the podium, please. And we would ask you for the council record to please state your name and address.
Okay, so my name is April Friendly, and I'd actually like to defer my time to Miss Charlene Lowe, East Chicago resident. She could give her address.
Ms. Lowe?
Okay,
Hi,
thank you.
I am Charlene Lowe. I'm a part of the Community Strategy Group. We're working along with the mayor to address the issues on housing, public health, and the environmental concerns in the U.S. Super Lead Fund sites, and also as well as the John B. Nicosia building. What I'm here for is to ask you as the council to make this a sanctuary city. Okay, the reason being because we are concerned with the current new laws that are coming in effect. And we do have people that we're working with that will be able to assist you. We have Dr. Needleman, Reverend Revere, the Immigration Board. We have Immigration Right Community that can assist you if you need it. Excuse me, because I'm reading this. I'm sorry. Her phone went out. I gotta go to my phone. What's going on here? Just 1 second. Okay.
Ms. Lowe, know that you have 3 minutes.
Okay, here we go. All right, we're concerned for the public because of the current situation of the present new administration coming in, and because the undocumented immigrants that we have in East Chicago, we want to make it a sanctuary city so they are not impacted by the situation from the present new administration. So we need your help in doing so.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no other public comment cards. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Garcia, seconded by Councilwoman Orange. Roll call, please.
Franciski?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Vasquez?
Yes.
Garcia?
Garcia.
Yes.
Orange? London?
Yes.
Medina?
Yes.
Monroe?
Yes.
Maldonado?
Yes, meeting adjourned.